You mentioned something that was really interesting. You said about Scotland, we need to see if these may happen or not. Torkel, they have to happen.
Yeah, there's an imperative to do it. We all understand that.
They have to happen. And I want to just give you a bit of optimism, because I am from Aberdein. I'm thoroughly involved in a lot of what's going on there. We've just had a new deep water port, £420 million spent to service offshore renewables, largely high-value manufacturing because the supply chain's based there. We've had the first floating wind project just approved off the coast of Buchan. It's only, and I'm going to put this in monetary terms for you all, it's 560 megawatts, and the company has committed to putting its HQ in Aberdein, and it's going to be £800 million worth of supply chain content for Scotland. So let's transfer this to the Western Isles. There's 3 projects that we're immediately close to here. Sheila, Talisk and Vary. The operation and maintenance expenditure in the supply chain statements that these operators have committed to is £335 million over the next 20 to 30 years. That's just the O&M, so we're not even talking about the assembly yet. That's huge. The potential is huge. Now, you've got a wonderful new infrastructure project here, and I believe we're going to be talking to Alex soon, so I don't want to go into that in too much detail, but we need more. And that should be the starting point, not the end point, the starting point for this constituency. If we make a go of this, that can service alongside the University of Highlands and Islands, supporting the right courses, employment opportunities for our younger people, so they can say, do you know what, I do have the opportunity to progress a really meaningful career here if I choose to stay. And that's the opportunity that we need to bring. And I know you agree with that, Torkel, but you talked about governments working together. The problem that you might have with GB Energy is that those offshore wind projects are in the power view of the Scottish Government because they're devolved to the Crown Estate Scotland. So you do need to work with them if GB Energy is going to be a success, and you're going to take an equity stake and have some left over for the community and make sure that there's a sustainable fund for the community, not just for strips and astroturf, as you rightly point out, but meaningful long-term infrastructure benefit for the communities here. So that's the first point. There has to be collaboration. But secondly, and you touched on it yourself, interconnectors, grid connections. We are miles off as a country on the investment in this expenditure. Miles off. And we can blame the Tories and we can blame the SNP to a lesser extent. They haven't got that much responsibility for this. But this has been 30, 40 years in the making. We should have been investing massively in our connections. And we need to do that now. So it's all very well, we've got port infrastructure expenditure promised by the Labour government. Get us the grid connections, the private sector can take over the port infrastructure, and we can create meaningful long-term benefits and opportunities for our younger generations for the future of their careers and the careers of the people in the room.
I agree with almost all of that. The potential is massive. So is the concern. There's people concerned that they're going to be bypassed, that their communities are going to be trampled on, that they're going to be left behind. And I hope it can't be beyond the wit of man to reward communities, because Absolutely. In Denmark, 50% of all wind farm developments have a community share. Germany is the same. We must be able to do the same here. And Murdo is by my side. You know, there are people that are skeptical. These planned turbines are only 3 or 4 miles offshore. People feel they're going to be overshadowed by them. They're going to be very close to them. And was Murdo himself, who has lots of technical expertise, but drew a very simple graph for me last year with an X and a Y bar. X, community support, Y, community benefit. And if the line goes up, the more community benefit, the more community support. And you won't do it without community support.
Yeah. Absolutely, Torkel. And I think probably that big thing, getting beyond that astroturfs and football pitches and all that kind of stuff, it's got to be something that changes people's lives. I was reading somewhere last year, something about the whole housing stock in Scotland would cost £40 billion to transform it, to get into the right state, to make it insulated and all the rest of it. And we're no stranger to that in the Western Isles here. The whole housing stock here would have to be upgraded as well. I think most of us outside of Stornoway are living with green kerosene tanks out the back of our houses as well. So we've all got to make personal investments in our house to change to electricity, for heating our homes and things like that. And we're going to use our cars, to change to electricity. I mean, these are massive changes we've got to make in our lives, massive investments we've each got to make. And I think I think probably people are nervous about that. They're seeing these big projects coming in, not really understanding where we fit into it. You know, where do we fit into that? What does it mean to us?
Well, we need, and community-owned developers like Golson show the way. Something over £2 million a year comes into communities from community-owned wind farms in Lewis and Harris, which is more than one of the commercial planned stations would give it over its lifetime.
Yeah. So would you, out of interest then on all of this, would you commit to blocking or doing your best to block any sort of wind farm project that the community did not approve of the benefits they were going to receive from? Would you step in as the MP for this place and say, that's not good enough for my people, and I'm stopping that?
There are so many processes and uncertainties, and this shouldn't be left to a single local, one of the smallest local authorities in Britain to handle on its own. If GB Energy means anything, then there should be that kind of backup of legal, technical, planning, expertise coming in, because the transformation, even in this part of the world, the Western Isles, and the rest is going to be massive. That's got to be part of GB Energy's remit as well. And there are so many competing and elements that have to be balanced out before anything goes ahead. What we know is that the onshore ones are already licensed; they'll go ahead. The offshore ones, the license were granted, as you say, Geoff, through the Crown Estate Commission and through the ScotWind. Sold cheaply, it has to be said. All sold in a oneer. The whole coastline of Scotland was sold off cheaply. And the money wasn't used to kind of set up the sovereign wealth fund that Labour have now promised. The Scottish Government didn't do that. They've just used it as daily expenditure. So that already the opportunity is being missed. It's kind of slipping through our fingers. So yes, I agree with Murdo. We need a strategy, and a strategy that puts communities at the heart of this.
The important thing about that, I think, and it's room for optimism, I think, here, is that if you speak privately to local MPs, MSPs, to developers, to Crown Estate Scotland, if you speak privately to these people, everybody knows that something has to change about the whole operation of the system, because everybody knows that, just as Torkel said, you have to bring people with you, because ultimately you can go so far thinking that you don't have to bring people with you and you can just steamroller it, but it will fall eventually.
Yeah, there's a very good reason the Tories didn't build onshore wind farms.
Yeah, so I mean, and privately they all accept that. Torkel said it's not beyond the wit of man, and it's not, because all these people get that. Octopus, the boss of Octopus was in the newspaper today or yesterday, I can't remember, saying effectively this, saying that we have to create a model where the communities that benefit the most from production are the ones where the production takes place. Is it beyond the wit of government, is actually the question. Not is it beyond the wit of man, because we know it's not. And all the private conversations that we all around this these sofas have, we know that people get this. The issue is government. And it comes back a lot to what you said right at the start, of course, about this urban-rural divide in policy, and whether or not, because the Scottish Government wants these options fees, it wants this revenue, because it wants to spend it in the Central Belt. And this is where the big issue comes up. At one point, they're going to effectively be forced to change the way this works.
Yeah, we will have to get in, at basement level with GB Energy and make our case. As I have been throughout my campaign, and I took Anas Sarwar up here during the campaign and made sure he had a round table with community energy companies. He didn't need convincing, really, but
so he was on board.
He was able to speak to them and get the message that this has to be community.
So can I just tease out with you? You mentioned something earlier about a sovereign wealth fund as Labour's plans. I've not heard that.
Yeah, I think that's. I hope I haven't misquoted Labour manifesto, but there is a plan for to set up a wealth fund similar to the Norwegian wealth fund to reinvest.
So just to tease that out then again, because ScotWind, Intog, sorry for the technical terms, but essentially the offshore wind developments, fixed and floating, they are again in Crown Estate Scotland's power. So how does a UK government ensure that there's a sovereign wealth fund from a devolved set of licenses? Are we chatting to the First Minister about how you combine that effort to ensure as you put it, community, long-term sustainable community benefit.
My ultimate aim would be a Western Isles sovereign wealth fund, you know, so that communities, you know, are either through arm's length investment. The money
Following
comes
the
in.
Shetland model.
Why send the money to Edinburgh or London? Yeah, we can deal with it here.
Thank you so much for watching. Press subscribe and you'll get all the best videos offering insight on Scottish politics delivered straight to your feed. Press subscribe and stick around. And if you'd like to hear our conversations in full, open up your podcast app and search for Holyrood Sources.